Hello everyone and welcome to this video. Now today I'm going to be taking a look at this album here. It is by a band called Field Music and it's their album Commontime. So I'll just be doing the usual thing in this video, giving a bit of background information about the band and the album, and then looking at my vinyl copy of it here, and then going over each of the album songs in detail. So Field Music are a band from Sunderland in the northeast. This is their fifth album and it was released on the 5th of February in 2016. So the band consists of two brothers, David and Peter Brewis, who play and record the vast majority of the instruments and vocals all by themselves. Now this album followed a sort of mini hiatus for the band. Their last album of original material was in 2012, an album called Plum, and in the intervening years they had each worked on solo work as well as recording a soundtrack album called Music for Drifters, under the Field Music name, as well as a covers album too, so they have been quite busy. Now generally this album is a bit more of a poppy flavour, a little bit more accessible compared to some of their previous works, and both of the Brewis brothers had recently become fathers at this point, and many of the songs on the album concern aging and parenthood rather than the more political themes of their previous albums. Apparently one of their sons, I think it was Peter's son, who developed an interest in all things Beatles, Bowie and Hall & Oates, he encouraged his father to write in a more sort of conventional and pop orientated manner. So it's recorded over a 6-month period. They've got their own home studio up in Sunderland, and like I said, over a 6-month period, quite in contrast to previous work where they would spend days on end in the studio working full days on their music kind of writing in the studio. For this one, because of again the responsibilities of parenthood, they could only maybe manage say 3 hours a day over maybe say a 4-day week, so they had to be a lot more focused and a lot more precise in the studio. So apparently the title of the album Commontime, it refers to the time signature of 4/4, which is often called common time, it's the most commonly used time signature. Perhaps as a little in-joke, because Field Music were and are notorious for using unconventional time signatures in the songs, and also changing time signature mid-song as well, as something which they're kind of known for. So maybe the title there was a bit of an in-joke. But anyway, the record was quite successful by their standards. It reached number 36 here in the UK, becoming their second most successful album so far. The follow-up, 2018's Open Here, would reach number 30. And critically, it was quite well received as well. Many at the time cited this as being the band's best work to date. So I will just show you my vinyl copy of it here. Quite cool packaging to this. So there's a cover and there's the back of it there, just with the track listing. But then the inner sleeves that come out, and it's kind of a die cut sort of thing. So there, that sort of comes out, so it's die cut, and then each of these inner sleeves has a slightly different pattern on it, so you can sort of customize the cover there somewhat, which is quite cool. So it is a double record. This has 14 tracks on it, so each of the inner sleeves look like that. The records themselves again all have unique labels on them, which is really cool. There's the other records, you get a download code as well, but I've used it, so don't go trying to steal that. Again, other record there, and plus you get a lyric insert, which is always very nice as well, so all of the lyrics to the tracks on it there. So yeah, that's the vinyl record looked at. Okay, so I'll now go over each of the album songs in detail. So I'll score each track out of 10, and then use those scores to give us a overall percentage marking for the album.
The noisy days are over.
Okay, so it kicks off with a song called The Noisy Days Are Over, which is a really great opener to the album. It's kind of got a very funky flavour to it, but also quite mechanical, very sort of Talking Heads sort of flavour to this one. Really good harmony vocals again from the brothers. I would say the song maybe goes on a little bit towards the end, but the groove is so infectious. Plus I like how it builds this song, the layers are slowly added to it. Starts off again quite minimalistic, but then by the end you've got a whole barrage of instruments on it. Now And lyrically, it could be kind of like sort of like telling someone to sort of like grow up and like sort of like grow out of like a sort of like a party lifestyle. They sing on it like, why don't you go to bed like everybody else? And like, yeah, like it is like a like good fun song. Also notably, this track got the seal of approval from Prince, who like when it came out in 2015 like retweeted like this song, like so like that was like so yeah, that's quite something. Like the band like got like quite a kick like out of that. So yeah, Noisy Days Are Over, really great song, great way to kick off the album there.
If you want this to be more, then you.
And then the next track up is called Disappointed, which I would give a 10 out of 10 to. This was the first field music song which I heard, and it really grabbed me, this one. It's got a great chorus, great bass line on it, really funky again. Lyrically, it's about sort of like, again, like a relationship and trying to urge like a partner to have more like realistic expectations like off like you on it. He sings like on it, if you want this to be more, then you've got to let me know. But if you want me to be right every time, you're gonna be disappointed. It's just a really tight pop song. Yeah, like I'd say that for anyone who doesn't know field music's not familiar, check out this song, and I'm pretty sure like if like this style of music like is your thing, you will be hooked like with this track. So yeah, Disappointed for me would get a 10 out of 10. Next track up is called But Not For You, which this song starts with a kind of, I think it's like a mellotron or something like on like the introduction, gives it a kind of 60s sort of psychedelic flavour to it, and like again lyrically is like a bit similar to like Noisy Days Are Over, about sort of like someone refusing like to grow up. They sing on it, growing up is easy now but not for you. And then like I like again the journey the track goes on, like the verse becomes a bit more jazzy, a little bit more sort of freeform, like in like sort of like a G like sort of like stance, but then the chorus comes back in like with its strong backbeat, gives the track a bit more form. So yeah, for me that one, another strong track there, will get a 9 out of 10.
If someone had told me how this would be, well, I'm glad I.
Okay, now the next song is called I'm Glad, which opens up the second side. And this is a good side opener, this one. Begins a little bit more sort of abrasive, like kind of tough sort of sound to it. Especially again, like the drum in there, kind of like all over the place. It really reminds me a lot of Fleetwood Mac's song Tusk, like again with its very sort of forceful drumming, like very much got like fall like off the track. Analytically, it's kind of about trying to predict like what would happen like in like your life. He sort of sings like on it, if someone had told me how this would be, I'd never have believed them. And like again, the track's got a lot of changes like in time signature, least of all like the bridge, like where the drums completely fade out and it's just the vocals. Again, it's very creatively done, this track. It doesn't really get boring, like I wouldn't say. So this one would get a 9 out of 10 there, for I'm Glad.
Don't you wanna know what's wrong?
Okay, next one up is another favourite of mine on the album. It's called Don't You Want to Know What's Wrong, which is another quite a soulful number, this, like I would say, like for like field music standards. Kind of about like a relationship like going wrong and sort of like growing like monotonous. He sings on it like those excuses that you made are wearing out and you've been wearing them for far too long. I do quite like the distinction like in like the song as well between the verses, like which is sort of backs like that, like a guitar riff, and then the chorus, which kind of sits like on like a more sort of like a synth bed like kind of thing. Gives a bit more impact like to like the lyrics, and like also I'm not sure like which one like he sings it, but certainly like on like that chorus, like when he sings like the line like don't you want to know what's wrong, it's just very soulful, very passionate. So I think it is a really strong track there, and we'll get a 10 out of 10 from me.
You can ask me any way you like.
Next one up is called How Should I Know If You've Changed, which this one is quite an interesting song lyrically. It's about sort of like the awkwardness like of attending like a school reunion. Like he sings like on it like about like how like the habits like of like the old school like have never changed, and like and like sort of keeping like one eye like on like the door to make like his escape, like if he's like not enjoyed it like or like something. And musically it is another mid-tempo song, strong XTC sort of vibes like from this one, and plus you got a great guitar solo on it as well. And like yeah, it is overall just another cracking song, so that one would get a 9 out of 10 from me.
Trouble at the lights, trouble at the lights.
And then the second side closes with a song called Trouble at the Lights, which is probably the most progressive song on the album, I would say. Begins with a great vocal from David Brewis. While it is slightly thin, like on lyrical content, it certainly makes up like in like its arrangement, which begins quite quiet with a sort of like a piano and like a vocal, but then slowly through the song more guitar parts are added before it ends like with a very heavy sort of like guitar piece. Reminds me a bit of the Beatles track I Want You She's So Heavy, like just like with these crunching guitars sort of like repeating like the same thing like until like it reaches like a climax. So yeah, Trouble at the Lights, a really good track there. Another 9 out of 10 from me.
They want you to remember. They want you to remember how.
Okay, then we're kind of brought back to earth a little bit with the next song, which is called They Want You to Remember, which is again another song kind of about reminiscing, like about like memories. He sings on it, those days they keep a piece of me, and it kind of has a Beach Boys-y sort of flavour to it, but sort of like early 70s Beach Boys, like where like they're sort of like a bit more advanced, like sort of like arrangement wise. I kind of hear it again, sort of like the vocals like on this song, and also like the piano part, plus then sort of like on the second half like of the song, you've got really creative like string arrangement on it. Really comes alive like in like the coda. It actually like actually becomes like very powerful like in like the coda, like I think. And yeah, I just think that I can't really find out too much fault like with this, and like other than it's maybe not the first song I think of like about this album. That would probably be like Noisy Days Are Over, Disappointed, or like maybe like the closing song, like, but still another solid album track here, which I would also give a 9 out of 10 to.
It's a good thing to give yourself to someone.
Now this is maybe the point on the album where things, I won't say start going pear-shaped, but it maybe doesn't have quite as much staying power as I maybe would have hoped it would have. Because the next song is called It's a Good Thing, which this is a good enough track. It's quite a funky song, but I would say it is verging on filler here. Lyrically, it's kind of like about giving advice to someone who is afraid of falling in love. Like he sings like on it, like there's only so long you can pretend to be fixed in the ocean out of anybody's reach. And musically, it is a toe tapper. Got some good backing vocals from, I think it's Liz Corney, who plays their keyboards like while on tour. Like she does some good backing vocals on this, but it is a very repetitive song, especially like in the second half of it. It's just them repeating that line like it's a good thing, and that does start to wear a little bit thin. Like field music are not normally known for their repetitive nature, they're always changing like and evolving, whereas this song, it kind of goes into that sort of territory where it's just stuck in like the same groove, the same kind of chorus, so it does wear a little bit thin. So that one would only get a 7 out of 10 from me.
Waiting out the door for you.
Next one up is called The Morning Is Waiting, which is a kind of lullaby song I've read, written by Peter Brewis for like his son. So it has quite comforting lyrics on it, like those who need to hear you can hear you. It's one of the most tender songs, but also for me among one of their least interesting. It just doesn't do anything aside from like sort of like again it's very soft, like very sort of like reassuring, like sort of song like to like his son. And I would say as well, they are good singers, like the Brewis brothers, but they're not great singers. They're not like amazing vocalists, so they don't quite have the voice to really carry like a ballad like this. But it is still good. It is good. It is listenable, this song. So I would give it a 7 out of 10 because like I guess like if I'm like in like the mood for it, like I would say that like I would like rather like this track.
Is this a shot? Yes, indeed it is. But if the actors act themselves.
Next up is called Indeed It Is, which is a more abrasive song, this, and lyrically it kind of paints a picture like of like sort of like average suburban life. He sings like on it like the sheets are warm and the ink is dry, the children are in their beds and the bins are outside. I really get a strong sort of 10cc vibe from this track, with its very sort of like again layered vocal harmonies, quite offbeat lyrical subject, as well as interesting use like of piano, like which kind of comes in and like sort of like embellishes like the song. Really could hear like Lol Creme singing this, like it is like sort of like that much very similar like to early 10cc sort of stuff. Just for me, it's not quite as memorable as some of the songs earlier on the album. It's not a song I would ever really necessarily think of like when I think of the album, but it is good enough, and it is it is like a good listen like when it is like on the album. So for me that would get an 8 out of 10 there.
Something must be up with you.
Another track now, which is called That's Close Enough for Now, which again, this song has a very XTC flavour to it, especially like on like the introduction, like really where it reminds me a lot of Senses Working Overtime, like that sort of like quiet and like plaintive, like acoustic riff. It then goes in a more jazzier sort of route, a bit more Steely Dan-esque like this one. I mean, it's not a favourite of mine. It's a song I would maybe be tempted to skip over like on the album. It's certainly not bad. It's certainly, again, it's listenable. It serves the album fairly well. I just think that if they were maybe looking to maybe condense this album down, this would be one of the first songs I would get rid of. And again, another slightly weaker song now called Same Name, which is lyrically fairly interesting. It's about sort of trying to connect with someone, trying to find common ground with someone, like whoever like the only thing like they have in common like is like the same names. Like things I call it like, remember when you said that we got the same names, so it must be fate. Musically, it is their usual kind of jerky like affair, which I mean is good, but it just doesn't really shift like anywhere. It's almost 6 minutes this track, and it just doesn't go anywhere like apart from like the verse chorus verse like sort of like structure to it. So personally, I would say is my least favorite on the album, and I think by this point we kind of are like just get like a little bit, like I won't say sick off the album, but it's not as sort of like, wow, this is really interesting. It's now this is just kind of like alright sort of thing. So yeah, Same Name for me would get a 6 out of 10 only.
Sorry if I'm ever short with you.
But then thankfully we are given a really strong closer, which is kind of like the reward for getting to the end of the album, like I feel. It's a song called Stay Awake, which is a real highlight on the record for me, and it just rounds things off really well like on the album. It's kind of got like a almost anthemic chorus on it. Like I wouldn't quite say it goes that far, like, but it is quite rousing. Again, like a lot of like drums like on it, written by David about the sort of like the strings like of having like a baby like was having like on like his relationship. Like he sings on it, I'm sorry if I'm ever short with you, and generally the kind of like generally the kind of like sleep deprived grumpiness like what like fatherhood like brings. Yeah, I think it's a great closer. It's a song which I really look forward to like when I'm listening to the album. Like it's a song which I really wait for, and it never really disappoints me. So yeah, Stay Awake would get a 10 out of 10. Another great song. Okay, so overall, this album would score 85%. So I think generally it is really clever, well-arranged, greatly produced pop music, really. I think the two brothers sing together very well. It's almost it is very difficult to sort of like distinguish like which one of them it is singing. And they are no doubt very talented people, considering that they wrote, recorded, arranged, produced this album pretty much all by themselves. And it is good to see like a band like producing sort of like old school, sort of like intelligent pop music like of like a similar ilk to say 10cc or XTC or like Talking Heads. Like it's got that sort of like flavour to it. One complaint about this album though might be its length. Like as I said, like by like maybe like the 10th song in, it is starting to wear like a little bit thin, and like I would maybe say chuck off maybe say 3 songs, maybe like It's a Good Thing, Indeed It Is, and or say Same Name, and That's Close Enough for Now. Get rid of those songs, and I think you would have a really strong, concise like 11-track album here. But as it is still a very strong record though, and one which I would definitely like recommend like to people. Certainly for me, I'd say it is my favourite of their albums. Maybe this one or Measure, which came out in 2010. That's also a very strong record. But like I'm not maybe like quite a fan like of like their more recent work, like the follow-up Open Here and what's the new one called Making a New World. I'm not as keen on those albums like as I am like on this one. So yeah, Commontime by Field Music, really great record here, and I hope you have enjoyed my review of it, and I will see you all next time for the next one. Goodbye.